to just say that I'm really appreciative of all you all being here tonight on the snowiest day we've had, right? I feel like the last time I did a live show it was raining and this weather was bad that night as well. So I appreciate you guys for coming out to like have this conversation with me. So if you guys just want to kind of introduce yourselves before we get started, kind of let people know who you are, maybe how old you are if you like, whatever you'd like to share about yourself, you can. So Audrey, if you want to go first.
My name is Audrey. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm 15 years old.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Samaj Terrain. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm 17 years old.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Danny Turberg, and I'm 17 years old. I go to Midland High. That's pretty much all.
Well, you guys are being really modest, but go ahead.
My name is Fafa. I'm a freshman at Central Michigan University. I'm 18, and I use she, her pronouns.
Awesome.
My name is Gabe Burnett. I am a senior at Delphi, and I use he, they pronouns.
My name is Ellery Laverty. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm 15.
Okay, awesome. So, yes, and if anybody is watching that could tune in to see if we're picking up the sound pretty good so people that's watching can hear, that would be great. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, it was interesting when I first scheduled this date, when I realized that it was going to be on January 6th, which I didn't think about that, but when I realized it was going to be on January 6th, I said this would be really interesting and really nice to kind of talk about what happened a year ago. I know people have been talking about it all day today. So I just wanted to kind of read something off and then we can kind of go from there. We're here together on one of the year anniversary of the highly talked about January 6th incident at the Capitol. Some call it insurrection and some call it vindication. Some say it was a protest and some say an attack. So we know that there are current trials going on regarding that day, and some people have already been sentenced to jail or arrested. I didn't plan it this way, but when I realized we were gathered today in unity, it reminded me that January 6th was one of the most divided days for Americans. So I would just like to know your thoughts about that. And I say divided, not but just knowing that no matter what you felt about that day, it was a day of division. I think we can all agree on that. So what are some of your thoughts about what happened a year ago on January 6th? And whoever wants to go first can go for it.
Sure, I can start.
Sure.
So first, just seeing it on live television, like, is this really happening right now? Like, amidst the presidential election and all that, I was in disbelief seeing grown adults acting in that manner, especially on U.S. Capitol, Soil Point. That's a sacred government building. So those were my initial thoughts.
Okay.
I guess what I thought was either side you're on, it's not okay to go and invade a Capitol building, and we can all agree that probably wasn't called for.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, so I mean, I was obviously very aware that there was a lot of people that were upset about the outcome of the election, but I never really thought it would escalate to like the levels that it did, especially when the peaceful transfer of power is something that America takes great pride in. But in this case, it didn't really seem like that was going to happen.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? And you guys can talk a little bit louder so we can hear you a little bit better, but go for it. Any other thoughts? No?
I was just very shocked because I think, like you said, that's something that we take pride in, and just I think that just kind of got lost in that moment and that mix. So it's just shocking to see.
Sure. Any other thoughts?
My French teacher made a really good point in saying that there are parts in our lives that we can tell are moments of history because you kind of know where you were when it happened.
Sure.
And I definitely knew where I was because I remember my brother, telling me what was happening, and I was like, this is a joke because I've heard about other presidents and everybody's no matter what election it is, there's always going to be people who are angry about the switch, but just the radicalness of the idea of just storming the Capitol didn't feel real.
Yeah, I want to share my thoughts. It was really interesting. I like to use the word interesting just because I was kind of in awe that it was happening. I mean, I kind of felt that we all knew something was boiling, right? People were upset. I mean, if you agree with it or not, people were upset. And to see that happen was just so interesting for me when I saw people literally climbing, right? That was the part that was alarming. But I also want to kind of play devil's advocate in this and then say, you know, people did feel, how do I want to say it, betrayed or not heard or not seen for whatever reason, right? So, but we never want to act that way to get our points across. But when talking to some people about it, I understood their frustration. Did I agree with what they did? No, I don't think we should ever do that. But I agree that people were frustrated, and we have to find a way to deal with our frustrations in a better way, in a more healthy way, and more mature way. I will say that much about it. So, okay. So, did anybody else want to share anything else about the January 6th incident?
And I just think like I think it's just an example for like future leaders, it's like future like who want to do
Sure. So the next one is gun reform, and I feel if you guys could just talk a little bit louder because talking through the mask sometimes it muffles already, and then you know if you're low. So I want people to be able to hear what you all saying because you guys have some really good points. So gun reform. I'm going to read this quickly. A gunman opened fire at Oxford High School in Michigan on November 30th. I think we all remember that day. Wasn't too long ago. Shooting 11 people. 4 students were killed and several others were left critically and seriously injured. The deadly gunfire in Oxford added to a growing list of shootings on school grounds in the United States this year, after a lull during the coronavirus pandemic. Because during 2020 it was kind of quiet, and then once people went back to school, it kind of got heightened up again. Because most schools were remote. So this year there have been 32 school shootings since August 1st. That's kind of alarming. So what are your thoughts on how to rectify this problem? Because a lot of times as adults, we try to solve the problems, right? And we try to kind of answer things for you all, what's the best thing for you all. But you guys are the ones actually in the schools. We're not. We're at home. So you guys are actually in the school. So what are some of your thoughts on the problem and how to rectify it? Would you feel safer if you had metal detectors? Would you feel safer if the laws were changed? What do you think will rectify this problem?
I think that like we had like higher security and like metal detectors and stuff like that. I feel a lot more safe knowing that people can't get into school without knowing they don't have a weapon. So yeah, that would make me feel more safe.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think for me, metal detectors could be helpful, but of course there's always people who are going to have a lot of metal on them anyways. Less
Sure.
people wear like chains on their pants as I am, or you know just various other things, piercings and whatnot. That it's going to take more time away. And I think the way that I feel safest is having more laws. I feel like it's easier in a lot of places to get a gun than it is to get a car. And knowing that like any student in my entire school could easily have one, especially with our personal rules of like our lockdown drills and stuff that everybody knows when you're in a lockdown exactly where you are anyways, because everybody's been through it now. So
Sure.
It's just I feel like whatever we end up doing, it has to be on a far bigger level than the individual schools.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else have something to say about that?
Okay, I'll go. I'll take to both points. Regarding the metal detectors, I've seen them work in process. Like, I attended Saginaw schools for many years that had metal detectors, and there has never been a shooting. So obviously, there's something right here. And to the point of stricter laws, I definitely agree that should be in place, and also stricter like restrictions and like more accountability for these incidents would be helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree that metal detectors can have like immediate like prevention of anyone bringing a firearm into a school setting. However, for me, it feels like you're kind of deviating away from the actual issue at hand, which is the gun, and turning schools more into like prisons and establishments where students are afraid to go to. And unfortunately, if someone is potentially planning on harming someone inside of a school, I feel like they would figure out a way to do that even with metal detectors imposed. I know there have been mass shootings which have happened with security present, with like metal detectors present as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like the big issue at hand is the guns, which laws can be imposed to prevent that easy access to the gun. Because you're right, it's so easy these days, and there's not comprehensive and strong background checks, which make it really easy for it to not die in the hands of people who probably shouldn't have guns.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point about, metal detectors don't like prison sometimes. 'Cause I know some people are opposed to having metal detectors because they feel like, it will have that kind of, look as like a prison, or some people feel less safe with metal detectors because they feel like that welcomes certain, I guess, fears. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, to build off of that, I do feel like having metal detectors and all sorts of things in place does make it feel a bit more restricted in schools. And I feel like what we really need to do is start like analyzing the kinds of people who commit these crimes and try to get to the root of the problem and solve whatever is causing it. Because if it's a mental health issue,
Yeah.
then if we can help deal with mental health issues, that'll drastically reduce the number of school shootings. I mean, there will always be cases of it, which is a shame, but I think the goal ultimately is to reduce the total amount and to get everyone into a position where you can feel safe going to school. Because
Yeah.
I had a cousin who's been in a school shooting, and for
Oh,
a
okay.
while afterwards, it was just, it was nerve-wracking for their parents, for my parents, to like want to send us into schools because it was proven right then and there in our own family that it's not safe to send children into buildings. And I've had friends who have had other friends in school shootings, and it's just, we need to get to a point where children don't have to be afraid to go to a place that should be safe for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have something to add. Okay. And I want to say this because this is just something that's always been on my mind in regards to this. Because I know we talk about mental health and getting help with that. When I look at the how do I want to say, the demographics of people that commit school shootings, right? I always think about, even growing up in the inner city, people had a lot of stuff going on. Like, it was hard, right? Where you dealing with like single parent households, drugs, alcohol, abuse, all kind of stuff. And I'm not saying everybody in the inner city, I don't want to put that out there, but I'm just saying that I know for a fact a lot of children dealt with that as well, especially in, sometimes in brown and black communities. So I'm always curious when we say mental health, where are we going with that? Because it seems like there's a certain demographic that commits a lot of the school shootings, right? So how do we get to that core problem instead of just making it like a blanket statement, right? Because, and let me just say it this way. When I used to work in the school systems and there was a child that did something, right, that misbehaved, instead of just having like the whole generic or general conversation of, that's not nice to do that, I dealt with that particular child because that particular child was having specific issues, right? So I always wonder, how do we get to the actual root problem of why do certain groups or people or children or in different demographics, why do we do these certain things? What's really happening? Does that make sense? So that's always been my question, is how do we get to the root problem? How do we solve this? Because people always say gun reform. It's always the first thing, gun reform, new laws. How do we do it? How do we do it?
I think a major way to go through the mental health route.
Sure.
I think that one way that can really help is to kind of, with our school counselors, and maybe not in the sense of what we typically see them as more of like schedule makers and stuff, but
Sure.
like people to work with you one-on-one through your mental health, especially for people in demographics who are from single parents or have recently had some traumatic thing happen, to make sure that the schools are aware of that and making sure that you as a person is safe, as well as the people who are going to be around you in the school in general is safe. But I think another way for the gun reform laws is to look at the person's records and like make sure that this is, when you are giving someone a gun, that this is a mentally stable enough person, because not always is it going to be a threat to a school or whatnot. It can also be a threat to that person
Yeah.
who could be using it to commit suicide or other things like that.
Sure. So let me just ask you guys something a little more personal. How did you guys feel? So when because like I said, I've been out of school for a little while, not too long. And I just wonder how you all feel when you're at school or at home and you get the news that something like this happens. Because with social media right now, you guys find out about stuff right away. I mean, it's not like when I was in school, we had to wait till we get home, watch the news, or look at it in the newspaper. Wow, a lot has changed since I was younger. And, but you guys have access to stuff right away. So how did you all feel, or how do you feel when you get these messages or you hear about these school shootings while you're at school? I mean, how do you feel about that?
I think a disappointing aspect of this is when I start getting news about, oh, there's been another school shooting, I'm never surprised. It's just, oh, another school shooting's happened. What else is new? And it's just sad and disappointing, but it's just become the reality that school shootings happen pretty regularly.
Yeah, kind of desensitized to it a little bit. Do you all feel that same way, where you kind of desensitized to it, where it's not as alarming anymore?
Yeah, I feel like we've been kind of like trained to think that it's normal when it's not, because I don't think it happens to the extent any other country besides here. But yeah, it does happen. So for me, you see the headline, we're like, oh, another mass shooting out of school. But I don't think it like processes enough as it should, because it's not normal by any means.
Yeah, Danny.
Well, because it was like so close to us, this one specifically, like, yeah, it happens a lot, unfortunately, but with the Oxford shooting, it was so close to us that it kind of got my heart racing a little more than usual when things happen like that. And then it kind of makes me think like we got an officer at our school, Officer Vincent, who like some schools don't have, officers around, or like somebody that can help defend the property.
Yeah.
And I feel lucky that we have the schools that we do, that have the resources for when something like that happens. I wish every school did, but
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? No, please do. Yeah.
I think one thing is that there has been progress being made, and there have been more laws and stuff in place to encourage safer schools and have like more checks on people and like making sure of everything. But I feel like we haven't gone far enough, and that's evidenced by the fact that the school shooting rate has not dropped much, if at all.
Yeah.
And what we need to do, I feel, is we need to start pressuring the people who make the laws, the people who pass the laws. We need to start pressuring these people to make more laws, because if we don't, more children are going to die.
Yeah, it's just so unfortunate. I just always think about you all being in the school while it's happening, even though it's somewhere else. Just that idea of you all are there, and then like kind of like that helplessness you might feel, like you're kind of in this place right now, and you just don't know where people's minds are. So, thank you for that. So our next topic is abortion, and I'm going to read something real quick. Abortion is when a pregnancy is ended so that it doesn't result in the birth of a child. So sometimes it's called termination of pregnancy. It is different ways to do that. Do you all agree with people having abortions? Do you agree with the government making decisions on this topic? Are there different circumstances where it is more acceptable than others? Should the partner be allowed to have a say before it takes place, or is it solely the woman's choice? So if you guys have some thoughts on just what you feel about abortion, do you feel like it's something that people should be able to do? Should the government be able to talk about it or make laws about it? What do you guys feel about that?
well, for me, because I'm a very Christian, man.
Sure.
And it's what I believe is that it's a sin to kill any living being, whether somebody believes that it's not a living being or not. To me, if it's even just a clump of cells, it's a living being.
Sure.
So that's what I believe.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Anybody else have anything else to add to that? What you feel?
I consider myself more pro-choice, but I always try and make it less of pro-choice and more on pro-education. And I feel like no matter how many laws we make about it, abortions are still going to happen. And there are always cases where some are have more of a better reason to do it than others. But if it means a woman is desperate enough to go somewhere where it's not safe and there are unclean materials or whatever, just to get rid of the child, like it's going to happen anyways, I think also a lot of it is that there are people who are making decisions are all men, and it would be nice to have women who can make decisions on their own body. And I am a Christian as well, and I do believe that that is a human soul. But I myself would never have one, but I don't think it is in my best. I don't think I should have control over somebody else's decision on that matter.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am with it. Like I personally, and I hate to say never because I don't know what life brings. Well, never now because there ain't no more babies coming. But but my point is that at that time, I never wanted to say never, right? Because it's like okay, but for me, I always made the choice to have my children, right? But then I will add this part into it, and I want you guys to chime in more too. I worked with women before and dealt with women who had been raped or molested. So in those type of situations, I'm always like, wow, that's that's kind of hard for me to make a judgment on them based on something that I never went through, right? And I don't know how that will impact them, their relationship with that child. And then some people have those instances and they still have the child. So it just depends on the person, right? So I'm also in the lane of I would not want to do that, but I don't believe that it's my right to tell someone else they can. That's how I feel. But I also get because I've talked to many people who believe that it's wrong, right? And I like their perspective too in regards to holding fast to their faith and their belief. So we're all allowed to have our different perspectives. So, Fatima, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with both of you guys that it's obviously everyone's gonna have their own opinion what they want to do with their own body, but I don't think it's anyone else's ability or the government's ability to be able to put in and impose a law that makes it not okay for everyone because everyone has their own reasons. Like you mentioned, the woman you work with, you don't know what people are going through, and regardless if they're choosing an abortion or choosing to go through with a pregnancy, there are multiple physical consequences, psychological consequences, emotional consequences. That's up to the individual herself to choose whether or not she wants to go through.
Yeah, because some people deal with different type of where they could die. Like the risk could be of their bodies rejecting the baby or between them. So I just always, for me, when I look at different things like that, I always try to say, okay, I'm not in their shoes, right? So I try not to make that judgment. But my question always is, even after the baby is born, I always like to challenge people to think about the life after, right? Okay, so we're pro-life. I have no problem with that, because I think I'm kind of like both, right? So then we have to think about, okay, what about the life once they're born? Are we going to continue to support that life that we wanted this woman or person to have, right? Are we going to continue to support? So does anybody else have anything? Because I like this discussion because I really like hearing from people who feel one way or the other, because it's really important for us to hear that, because you all will be a part of these lawmakers. You guys will be the lawmakers, so it's good for us to be able to talk about this and be open and transparent with what we feel. Does anybody else have anything else to?
I think a good way to look at this argument is deciding where it's rooted in, and just where the control of women's bodies starts and how young women are, when they're sexualized, when they're all of it. It's finding where it begins.
Yeah, did you guys hear that? That was really good. Just finding where the root of that control begins. That's a really good point, because it really does begin at a very young age for young ladies, where their bodies are being controlled, or like you said, sexualized at ages where they shouldn't be, right? So I agree with that. Did you have anything to add, Gabe?
Yeah, I did want to. One issue that I've seen with this whole thing is losing sight of the pro-choice aspect of it, because it's not. Pro-choice is not about women getting abortion. It is, but it's more about women having access to get an abortion. They can still choose to not, but I feel the more important thing is women should have access to the ability to get an abortion, because maybe they won't have a medical issue with it, but financially, if they have a child, it's going to cause enough issues that they could cause medical issues later or whatever. Just so I feel like the access to it is important, And it's like, if abortions are legal, I feel like the number of like cases where it's like, oh yeah, a woman died because she tried to give herself an abortion because she got an abortion from the place, that will go way down because it'll just be an easy access thing.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned the part about the financial aspect of it because it is hard. You know, I was a single parent of four boys, and that can be hard, especially if you don't have, you know, the moolah, you know, coming in, right? And but I mean, I couldn't imagine not having them, but you know, that is an important part. And then also, I always ask people, you know, some of the people that say, you know, oh, well, you shouldn't have an abortion are the same ones that say, you know, you can't have a child, if you can't afford them, then why'd you have them? It's like, well, you told me to, you know. So it's this thing where it's like this I think it's lack of empathy and compassion sometimes. And again, I get it because I grew up Christian. I grew up Christian, and I get it, and I do believe in life. So it's this hard balance that I have with it myself, where I don't want people using it as like birth control, if that makes sense. You know, where they just like, because I know people who've done that too. You know, that have a lot of fun, and then they're like, okay, I don't want this baby. But when it gets down for me, when it gets down to, you know, if they were violated or, you know, they're dealing with that and that impacts their mental health or things of that nature, then I, you know, want them again to have the resources, the knowledge to have a safe place to go and not do it in the basement, which happens sometimes. Anybody else have anything else? This is a good conversation. Yeah.
Just one last thing for me.
Sure.
You know, this opinion, it's disliked by a lot of people.
That's okay. I'm used to that, so it's okay.
But because of my faith, and it's kind of hard for people to understand my faith, because I'm a man, and I mean, I couldn't ever get an abortion because I'm a man. But I feel that because of my faith, and I believe that God created everybody to have a purpose, that there is no life that is so worthless as to be, like, you know, whatever situation it may be, or whether it's a very unfortunate situation or just like, you know, but every single life to me is has a purpose, and it's not really fair to me to get rid of that life before it has a chance to live out.
No, I appreciate that, and I think you know, it's not easy having an opinion that's not the popular one, right? So I appreciate you for sharing. I really do, because I that touched my heart, because I do believe that. Because I mean, I know for myself that there's children that I've worked with that their parents said they wish they never had them, or you know, that they would never be anything, and they became really good people. So I get that. So I appreciate you for sharing that. I really do. Does anybody else have anything else to add to it? Sure. Yeah.
I think another important thing is like just education around Planned Parenthood.
Oh, sure.
I think a lot of, I guess, collectors, you could say, think that Planned Parenthood is paying for getting abortions, when a lot of it's education and getting just like education on the things that just women's health, mental health, everything about that.
Sure. No, that is true. She's talking about Planned Parenthood. And a lot of people do think it's just for someone to go get an abortion, and it has so much more that they offer. So I appreciate you for sharing that. So the next one is one of my favorites, is cancel culture. So with that, cancel culture or call out culture is a modern form of basically ostracizing people and, you know, kind of putting people away, in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles, whether it be online or professional circles, whether it be on social media or in person. The expression cancel culture has mostly negative connotations and is used in debates on free speech and censorship. So, and I have some people named here that were canceled, but you all know, you guys see it all the time. So what are your thoughts on cancel culture? Do you agree with someone being canceled for past remarks? Do you feel like they should be canceled for current things? What do you guys think about it? Because I have a lot to say about it, but I want to hear what you all have to say about cancel culture.
I think it could be very like situational. I think if it's something somebody did like many years ago, it wouldn't be fair to cancel them for that, because in that time they could have changed, they could have bettered themselves. But if somebody's just constantly like, you know, going on media or just like going places, you know, like being racist or like being just like genuinely like unacceptable all the time, and had an opportunity to prove that they could change but never did, I think those people, you you know, could be not silence per se, but like
Yeah.
could be not allowed to do some of the things. So.
Sure, thank you.
So for cancel culture, especially in our generation with the massive amount of social media that we have, it's pretty popular. I know a lot of people in in real life who've been like quote unquote canceled, or like there are kids who people won't hang out with anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that because of the internet, especially a lot with the more child stars, and maybe not in the sense that they were actually like little kids, but like people who are teenagers and becoming super popular, and then they get so much backlash from grown people because they do stupid things, and like when you're a kid, you make mistakes and you find out, okay, maybe what I did was racist or whatnot, and I especially think that canceling people from long past mistakes can be a much larger issue because a lot of it is just maturing. But of course, there's always exceptions from that. If you say something wrong, like just a couple weeks ago, or
Yeah.
it comes out that like this entire time you've been stealing money from your workers or whatnot, that can, of course, your actions should have consequences, but not every action needs drastic consequences.
Yeah. Samaj.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in some instances, I do agree with cancel culture. Like, most of us are on social media, I assume we see people say things and they get away with it. But also, sometimes cancel culture won't be enough. Like, someone will say something like way out of line, and sometimes they need to be taken down from their platform. Maybe they need to lose their job, get taken out of an institution. So sometimes, you know, there's a line between should be canceled or should this person just be like completely, you know, taken off from their
Yeah.
from their job.
Yeah. And we're seeing that a lot. I mean, I know on social media, people find out stuff on social media, and like it's a swarm of people that come in, right, and find out where people work. They find out where they live, and they either show up to their house or they, get them fired. So I mean, I'm like, wow, I just can't. And again, this is dating myself, but I just cannot imagine growing up in the age of social media. Like me personally, I cannot, because people just have too much access to you, and it just seems like it's just a lot sometimes, because you really do have to tread very lightly, because honestly, you can offend anybody at any time, because we all have so many different thought processes, right? And I know I can, because I try to watch what I say, but sometimes it comes out and people are offended because you think differently than them, right? So for myself, and I want you guys to share what you feel too about this, but for me, I think about 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago in my life, some of the stuff that I think has evolved, right? So with some things that maybe 10, 15 years ago, somebody may, hear me say or something to say, oh, I can't believe she said that. And it may not, I mean, it's not going to be anything like super racist or anything like that, but just different things, even the way we're supposed to talk, right? It's different things that we can't say now because it's offensive or it's not socially right to say, in public. That, I mean, not even 10 years ago, but I'll use 10 years ago, it was very normal for people to say, and it wasn't necessarily meant as an insult, it was just the verbiage that was used, right? So I'm kind of on the fence with cancel culture sometimes, because I do believe, like what you talked about, Danny, people should be allowed to have that opportunity to evolve. Because I think about myself, like I've evolved, okay? We're supposed to always be kind of growing, but there's some people who are just nasty, and they've been nasty, like they've been consistently nasty, right? So that's different. So did you have something to say, Fatima?
Yeah, I mean, I see how cancel culture can mimic like mob mentality, like turning people down and then forcing them to like post an apology or apologize when they don't genuinely understand what they did wrong.
Right.
But then I also see how holding someone accountable for their action is also considered cancel culture. For me, those are two completely separate things. And when it comes to bringing up things from people's past, I do see how it's valid if they've never apologized and if what they said or did is actually offensive, because I do think you should hold people, especially like public figures, accountable for offensive things they may have said in the past. And especially if it's like still up on their social media, it's like, why didn't you take that down?
Sure.
You know it's wrong now. So I see that. And then in terms of like canceling a celebrity and not wanting to watch their show or something like that, I don't think that you should feel bad or feel like you're being overly sensitive for not wanting to support someone
Sure.
who has said or like done offensive things, because that is like your right, those are your morals and beliefs that you don't want to like conflict with.
Yeah, no, I agree.
like we're a trend of like creators or influencers can like maybe fake an apology and not really understand. So I think that's something that's common now.
Yeah, sometimes they apologize because they kind of have to, right?
And to like save their brand or something like
Save
that.
their brand. Yeah. And then I think about it, Gaby, I want you to go. I think about though, like if a person 10 years ago was not in the limelight, right? If they weren't on social media or they weren't this famous person, and then they came into this, do we still hold them accountable? And again, I'm not talking about like racist stuff or like just like terrible, horrendous things. I'm talking about stuff that, again, for myself, I am 42 years old, and 20 years ago, there were words that people said all the time. I mean, was it right then? Probably not, but it was socially acceptable, right? And then there's things now that some of us would never dare say because we've come into more knowledge of things, right? And so I just always wonder, where do we make that line in the sand? Where we hold someone where have nothing wrong with, like, of course, holding them accountable and saying, hey, I've grown since then. But do we just because I mean, it's some people now, even with like if it's a rape accusation, if someone says it, they lose their job instantly, right? So and then sometimes they find out later that never even happened, right? Or the person made it up, but this person's already been defamed and so that's the part where sometimes it's hard for me to see where that line should be drawn. But go ahead, Gabe.
I'm jumping back to what Thomas said.
Sure.
I think cancel culture did start from a fundamentally good place of calling out people who did genuinely horrible things or said horrible things or hurt people.
Yeah.
But it's kind of morphed into two separate categories that go by the same name of like cancel culture, which is the stereotypical toxic. Oh, you're just trying to get someone taken off their platform, but you don't have enough justification for it. And call out culture, which is like getting people to bringing light to this person is doing these things, this person has done these things, and they will not take accountability for it, and we need to do something about it. And I feel that the second part, this call out culture, is a very important aspect, and one that we should try, that I think us as like everyone needs to try to push cancel culture away from person Y said something once that made me a little bit upset, so we need to completely destroy their career, and move it back to this person is not a good human being, and we need to make them accountable for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree, and I think because I've seen how people use the other part of it almost like a weapon. Like if they don't like the person, they'll destroy their lives, and it's like, well, do you not like what they said, or do you not like them? Because sometimes people use it. I mean, now I've seen it where people are like, I'm gonna get them fired, and they go on this task. Go ahead, Audrey.
Kind of to add on to what you said, I feel like in order to de-weaponize it, I think that, of course, as what Gabe was saying, for calling out people who are just genuinely awful people, needs to happen. But I think one major way that in my family, when we hear about a big company or a big celebrity that did such and such bad thing, typically what we do is that we just personally boycott them. And we don't spread it, and it's not canceling them, it's not incredibly destroying their career, but it's us not willing to participate in their actions and showing. Now, of course, if this person turned out to be, like, all throughout their history, turned out to be a really bad person, then we would take further actions. But if it was just this guy, like, didn't apologize for this thing he did a long time ago or whatnot, then we tend to just do things like just not watch his movie or not purchase his items.
Yeah. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I think to some degree, there's no way anybody should if somebody says something, unfortunately, even if it's bad, there's a right, it's a human right to free speech. However, I do not think that if somebody has something like a talk show or something like that they shouldn't be knocked down and brutalized. But at the end of the day, I think everybody, even after they say it, and they get knocked down pretty much right when they say it. Like if somebody said something on the talk show next day, they got knocked down, they should have the opportunity to rebuild and kind of change themselves over time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have the opportunity to come back at some point and make the way they work. So,
Yeah, I like, yeah, go ahead, Gabe.
I just want to bounce off of
Sure.
that. With the whole free speech thing, I do think everyone does have the right to free speech, but no one has the right to avoid the consequences of their free speech, because you can say things, sure, but that doesn't mean you are free from the repercussions of what you said. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing that people are, that the accountability is still there and people are aware of it. But I do think that just because someone was called out or canceled for whatever reason, if there was justifiable reason as to why, I feel they can't just claim, oh, it was my free speech that allowed me, that was letting me say this, so you guys shouldn't be able to do this to me. But yes, you used your free speech to say this, and now you have to deal with the consequences of what you said was not okay.
yeah, like I was more coming from like, you know, if it was on social media, taking away like social media to me isn't taking away their free speech thing. They still get consequences obviously for what they say. But like taking away their ability to say what they have the right to say shouldn't be like, so like nobody should, I don't think anybody should be taken off social media for what they do. I think there should be other ways to
Be held accountable.
yeah, be held.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's so interesting too because I see, you know, this whole cancel thing now, right? And it's just it blows up so quick before people even get a chance to really investigate. And that's the thing is like, you know, I think about different ways that people could purposely try to destroy someone. Now, when you find things that are like emails and like video and like of this person doing or saying something and they have a pattern of doing these things, I'm all for it. And again, I think it goes back to I think it was Audrey maybe that talked on it, but use your dollars. I mean, because I'm big on that. Like if even here in town, like if I feel like a person doesn't necessarily want me in their store or treat me with respect, I just won't shop there. You know, I don't have to make a big thing about it, you know, all around town, but I definitely will not shop there anymore. So there are different ways and a lot of different ways to be able to hold people accountable for you personally. But I do, so anyway, I'm rambling, but I have different sides of that where, like, even what you said, Fatima, that I definitely agree with. And then I also think it goes back to, like, the personal part is, like, you know, hey, I just won't shop with that person, or I just won't, you know, support that person any longer. So, anybody else have anything else to add to that? No? Okay, cool. So, I want to talk about social media a little bit. We want to kind of get into that because we talked about cancel culture, but I want you all to talk about, you know, with social media. And because back in 2005, when social media was still in its infancy, only about 5% of users in the United States were involved in social media. In 2019, that number grew to about 70%. The amount of time spent on social sites is astounding, apparently. One report indicates the average teen ages 13 to 18 spends about 9 hours on social media each day. Tweens ages 8 to 12 are for about 6 hours a day. So I want to ask you all if you feel like social media, well, let's talk about the positives and some of the negatives of social media that you all see, because you all grew up in social media. So this has been a part of your life. Let me tell you all about me, okay? We literally had an Apple computer with a big apple with the different colors in it, right? It was only one, and we got to take turns signing onto this thing, and it would have to like dial up, and it would make this noise, and like, you know, if you had it at your house, you only had one computer, and if your mom picked up the phone, it would like end the connection, so you have to wait again for dial up. So that you guys have it really nice that you can just do it this way. But with that said, do you all feel like it's a help, a hindrance? What have you all seen in your own personal lives or with other people? I mean, because there's so much stuff that happens on social media. So does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think in my personal life, it's been much more of a help. I personally am not allowed most social social media platforms. I had Netflix, YouTube when I was little, but I was very restricted on what I could watch. I basically only watched Bill Nye. And then once I got into 8th grade, I was already taking high school level classes. I finally got my mom to let me be able to have Instagram. And for me, I just checked and I have about 2 hours on it a day, which is still a lot, but it's not quite 9.
Oh, I have more than that, so you're doing better.
On my phone in total, it's a lot more. But just like in the sake of being able to know what was going on, as we mentioned before, like the fact that we heard about Oxford as soon as we did, and I am able to communicate with friends that normally I can't communicate with. And in another way, it's also helped me to be able to know, I feel like, a lot more of people's personal opinions than a lot of other people do. I know a lot of people, when they go on social media, get that echo chamber where they only hear what they want to hear. But on mine, I have seen so many people with all sorts of different kind of mental health awareness of like things I didn't even know about. I learned a lot about people experiencing all sorts of different things in their lives, and while sometimes it's a lot to deal with, it's also really empowering to be able to empathize with people more at a younger age. That being said, of course, there's also things like hurtful trends, like the Despicable Lick or whatever that's like destroyed Midland High, and just like awful trends like that.
Yeah.
Also, soap dispensers and stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
women's
I
bathroom
heard
no
about
longer have
that.
that.
It was I think it was the dumbest thing ever.
It is.
All these little the challenges and stuff on like TikToks and stuff. I'm just amazed that people are participating in this. Some of them are lethal, like they could actually kill themselves or somebody else. So it's just been very interesting to watch. So thank you for that, Audrey. Anybody else have anything to add for social media?
Yeah, social media does come with its great amount of goods, and it comes with its great amount of bads. So like I have cousins who live in the Netherlands, and I can communicate with them every single day.
Yeah.
And they went on a trip to Paris, and I got to know how that went. But I think a lot of it is also kind of like playing it right. Like if you just know, like if there's a cyberbully, if you just know that they're not, they're too much of a coward to say that to you in person. That there's a lot of things that it takes a mindset, but you gotta play it right. I think you gotta know what you should and shouldn't do on there, who you communicate with, and if you get jealous easily, because I've heard people see posts and they get jealous over things that other people have or experiences other people have, then maybe social media isn't for you. But I think there's a great amount of goods as there is a great amount of bads. But if you focus more on the goods and just do the goods, it's a good thing. So.
No, I agree. And just so you guys know, most of the stuff that people, especially influencers, put on there, they put like the fabulous looking things, and their lives are not always that fabulous. And I think that people do get into this whole thing of comparing their lives against the people they see on social media, and it's all an illusion. So like, and then they kind of feel like, have mental health issues or depression of things because they feel like they aren't at the same level as someone else is, but it's not true anyway. So, but yeah, so I agree with you said, trying to pick the good and not the bad. Samaj?
Yeah. I was gonna agree with that. There are the good and the bad, especially during this pandemic. I feel like social media has been the perfect way to connect with people all over, and I've learned a lot about myself from social media as well. Like how to interact with people, and then to get into the negatives, I would say like I can see the demographic of the users on social media getting younger and younger, and the things that kids are now exposed to. Like my brother will come home talking about something that I know about, and it's like, oh, did you know about this? Like,
Right.
The access of information is so broad nowadays. You can never, it's hard to limit. So I would say that's one of the cons.
Yes, I agree. The access to information it blows my mind that people have access to that, and like you said, younger and younger. It just blows my mind. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with like all the positives you guys mentioned. Like, I'm a pretty active social media user myself, so I definitely agree with all the positives. But I think you also have to take into consideration consideration like how deceptive social media can be, whether it's intentional or not. Because for example, I can make my life seem this perfect sort of way when in reality it's not like that, because no one's life is ideally how it looks on social media.
Yeah.
And I think it's very valid for people to begin to compare themselves, but how can they not when they see people on trips and vacations doing very elaborate things? But those are just the things people choose to post about, because that's like the happy moments, that's the highlights that people want to talk about. So I think it's really important to like look at how curated and how easy it is to make your life seem a certain way, whether it is intentional or not. And then also, I do think it's also very scary how kids these days, like even younger and younger, they can just make a social media account, they can go on TikTok, they can do this, they can do that, and really no one is stopping them. And it's like, it's very concerning, like the things that they have access to.
And that adults have access to them. That's the part that scares me, is that children sometimes just are not aware, right, of who they're talking to. They think they're talking to someone else. And that's the part that scares me, are the adults that know that children are on there and prey, and that's the part that's scary. That's how you do that.
I kind of want to add on to like how like younger and younger kids are getting on social media. So I think like also the spread of beauty standards for young girls.
Beauty standards, yeah.
There's just so many young people are coming to social media and seeing that, and I think that's where like a lot of things start. A lot of bad things can start.
Yeah.
Like the love guys.
Because they have Photoshop, they have all the stuff to get all the little nooks and crannies, I like to call them, that we have, and they get all that like polished out, and it looks all beautiful, and puts this little dent out of the picture, but really it's not true. So yeah, it does. It just gives a false illusion of like of what normal bodies look like. So I agree with that. Okay.
I do think that while there are pretty obvious negatives of social media, it is definitely 100% a double-edged sword.
Sure.
There's also, like, going off of the beauty standards, we've seen a counter movement of people showing body positivity, which I would say before the big boom of social media, we don't really hear too much about like body positivity that much. We hear a lot about you have to fit into this, and this, you have to do this, and this. Whereas now with social media, there's the spread of, well, I don't fit into this, so I probably am not the only one. There's too many people in the world for me to be the only one exactly like this.
Yeah.
That I think social media is also bringing about it's bringing about like an acceptance, an internal acceptance of yourself, and an acceptance of other people that has been unprecedented, and it's definitely speeding up the acceptance like differences in each other.
No, I agree. I agree with that, because I think that because of social media, people are being more exposed. Like different type of people are being more exposed in a good way. So like you said, someone else that may feel like they were the only person like that in the world, and then they see someone on social media, they feel connected to something. Is that kind of like what you're? Yeah. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
I think to sort of add on to what both of you mentioned, with the kids on social media, I really like how you said it, that how it can be a really good thing if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think the concept of having little kids on social media, things like TikTok, things like Instagram, that are not a safe place, but as people who are more mature, like when I was in high school already, I knew like how to interact throughout social media. Like even like my profiles are always private and that kind of thing. But then I see little kids who don't know that, and they go in here completely oblivious, or like they heard the scary stories of predators on there, but they don't understand that they aren't going to just message you randomly, what's your address, and we'll start by trying to just be like, we're just friends, and then build it from there.
Right.
That they don't know how to use it properly. And of course we have rules on social media that says you have to be such and such age to be on there, but nobody actually really follows
Yeah, you
that.
just put a different age in there.
You can put it in 1912 and we'll still accept it.
I know. It's the truth. And it's for me, another part to social media that's kind of like a pro and a con sometimes is the amount of time people spend on it. And how people could be in the same room and just like tap in and not really, engage with each other. And just like, cause when I was a kid, and I'm just, I just feel really dated, but we had to play outside. Like, we had to go outside. Like, there was no option. Like, you didn't get to say you didn't want to play outside. Like, you went outside and played, right? And I just remember the imagination, the freedom of playing outside, right? And now so many kids don't even play outside. Like, they literally don't know how to engage with each other. You know, I even think about sometimes like people even like when they're starting to learn how to date or go out with people. Sometimes they don't know how to interact with other people because they're so used to interacting behind a screen. So I think for me, it's just about balance, right? And not doing too much of anything. Like just kind of like learn that balance and be able to balance social media life and then balance like real life and like real people and being able to have those conversations. Because I think a lot of times people are really because we have like higher social anxiety right now where people are like kind of awkward in front of each other because they don't know how. They don't know how to do it, you know, or even learning how to I don't know, just kind of engage. It's just interesting because I see a difference, you know, and then also like with anxiety, different things like that has gone up, and I think it's because we're like it's just always moving, right? There's like we're not learning a lot of calm times, you know, so we're just always kind of going, trying to see if we got more likes or more followers and all this stuff. So I just think it's about balance. I mean, do you guys agree with that? Just kind of like, you know, having that balance and things of that nature. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, do you guys have anything else to add? Because those are all of our topics, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys because it's really cool getting you all's perspective because you guys are like literally living it. You know, we say a lot of stuff, we make a lot of rules and make a lot of determinations, but you guys are actually the ones living through some of this stuff. So do you guys have anything else to add?
I would just say, main thing around all these topics, especially the social media and all the things going around, practice like mindfulness. Like we spend so much time looking at these things and focusing on it. We don't spend enough time like being in the moment.
Sure.
That would solve like a lot of problems in this case.
Yeah, being more present, right? Yeah.
I think this is how it should be for everybody, where everybody can share their opinion and everybody else can respect their opinion. And I had a really great time having a conversation with y'all because it was good and it was civil and I had a good time.
No, it's just so refreshing to me, right? Because we know out of 7 people, most of us might have a difference of opinion at some point in time, right? If we talk about enough stuff, you know. And I think that it's so important for us to be able to sit here and just talk and share without fear of judgment or being canceled, you know, because I'm just kidding, you know, because we're not saying anything too major here, but I just think that it's important for us to be able to feel comfortable because I think the more people are able to share, they will work things out within themselves and with others. You know, if you feel like you have to keep it inside, then a lot of times it does more harm than it does good. So I appreciate you saying, do you have anything you want to add?
I think you guys basically covered it.
Okay. Anything else, Dave?
I do think that one thing that's important is focus is that you need to take breaks for yourself and focus on yourself. And that's not just like a break from social media or a break from your friends. You need to take breaks from even your family or from worrying about your like daily obligations and just sit down and think about who you are as a person. Because if you don't do that, it's going to end badly for you. You're going to have mental health issues and all sorts of things that we've been seeing show up more and more as we go on and we study people.
Yeah. Well, that's why we need you all making these laws because you guys need to tell these employers this so we can have days, you know, because a lot of times people just pretend they're sick and they say, I'm sick, I can't come in today. But really what it is that some people need those days to just reset. And as adults, we need them too. And the employers don't agree with that. So people lie and say they're sick, but really they just need to go walk in the park. So you need to make some laws changing that for me, Gabe. I appreciate that. Did you have anything else to say?
I just want to say thank you for like having this discussion because I think just having discussions kind of brings people together.
Yeah. Oh, thank you all for doing this. You know, it's just so important to me, and you know, you just never know different friendships, relationships that you can build, and just being able to have open dialogue is so important as we try to navigate through life together because we're all here together, whether we like it or not, So we have to learn how to do it in a civil and a respectful way. So again, I appreciate you all for taking time. And you all get a mug. I did bring you all a mug. I don't know if you guys drink coffee, tea, or drink whatever you wanted, but you guys all get one of those. And I have those over there. So yes, I appreciate you guys so much. Happy New Year to you all. And thank you so much. That's the end of our coffee time chat.
All right, everybody.